Christina Lamas, welcome to the show, and what would you like to add to that intro?
Well, thank you, Mike, for that intro. I think more than anything, just to emphasize that first and foremost, I'm a mom of a little girl, and everything else flows from being a mom. Then uh, everything flows from that, from my perspective.
Well, that's a good perspective to start with. Let's talk about the rhythm of your daily life of prayer. What does a prayerful day look like for Christina Lamas?
I'm going to answer your question with maybe a little bit of a story. It may be a pet peeve of mine that it always resonates a little bit different depending on how it's being asked. But a few years ago, someone asked me, "How's your prayer life?" And I struggled answering that question. And I took it to prayer, and I had the spiritual director that we wrestled with the question together, and he helped me to understand that there is no right way to have a prayer life. And it was challenging because every time I'm asked that question, as if there is an assumption or there is a prescribed answer that I'm supposed to give, that it's great, that it's perfect, and I do A, B, and C. And because I'm a mom, a single mom, I'm also working full time. I don't have the luxury of having a very structured prayer life. And he helped me understand that the way that I'm living my life and how I'm praying is part of my prayer life. And so my prayer when we were not in quarantine was more on the go. I really enjoyed the time I was in the car because I was alone and I could pray, I could meditate carefully while I was driving, but still be able to have that one-on-one, more personal, and not have to worry about, is my daughter fed? Is she ready for school? And all the hustle and bustle that goes prior to getting out the door. But now that we're in quarantine, it's finding those moments of when I'm working. I've taken a 5-minute, 10-minute break, or early in the morning when I wake up before there's any noise, and finding those moments of solitude to be prayerful. And that can consist of so many different things. There is no right or wrong way. Sometimes I will go to mass in the morning if it's being offered at my parish. Sometimes I will pick up the rosary. Sometimes it'll be a conversation between me and God. Sometimes it'll be a spontaneous prayer. So there's no way or wrong way. So I would say, to answer your specific question, my prayer life is good right now, but it has its ups and downs, just depending on what's going on in my life.
I think that's why. I mean, there's this definite sense that if we start with there's a right way to pray, that can be really hard in terms of getting started. So I think it's really helpful for a lot of us just to have kind of an open mindset. Take us in the car commute with you. You're driving to work carefully, right? And that could be a time of prayer. Are you listening to music? Are you praying to God out loud? Is it just sort of interior prayer? Or are you just kind of trying to calm your mind in between lights? Or what does that look like?
It's an actual talking to God. So it's an out loud. And there are times where I'm not saying anything and I'm simply quiet. But for the most part, it's an actual conversation. It's the way that I nurture the relationship that I have with God. I have a verbal conversation. Then at times I stop talking and say, all right, God, help me make sense of what I just said, and just listen and ponder and reflect, and allow myself to just focus on the road as I'm driving, but allow what I've just communicated to percolate in my mind and in my heart, and allow that to sit with me for the rest of the day. One of the things
That's very wise. I mean, that percolation process is like savoring,
Mm-hmm.
and it can take some practice. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that one of the things that I tend to get accustomed in the morning. My phone usually is near my nightstand, and I get the daily readings. And so sometimes I'll pick up my phone more than often, and I'll read the gospel. And so I let that be my morning prayer as I'm getting ready, as I'm taking a shower, as I was heading out the door, I'm heading into my office to begin to work. And again, it's finding that word or phrase and letting that resonate throughout the day. And I find it coming up multiple times. So that's just another example. Again, there's no right or wrong way to pray, but they're prayerful encounters and moments that I enjoy.
Let's talk about silence for a second. You mentioned sometimes just listening and trying to be still and quiet before God. I guess two questions. One, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not scary and 10 being terrified, what is your grading of yourself in terms of silence? You know, how scary is silence? And then second, um, are there conditions that make silence easier for you?
Mm. So silence is not scary. So on your scale from 0 to 10, I would say maybe an 8. Uncomfortable. On this scale from 0 to 10, maybe like a 2 or a 3. So it's not scary. It's just uncomfortable. And so that to me at times is just challenging because I'm one that wants to speak and I want to say. And so letting go of that control and just being in the moment and trying to quiet my mind and my thoughts, it's challenging. But I have found myself being in front of the Blessed Sacrament in church, that environment, just being present, allows it to feel a little easier. And in the mornings, I tend to find in mornings, early in the mornings, to be the opportunity when I first wake up to allow my mind to be quiet, and just allow the silence to resonate and to see how God may be communicating to me for that moment.
I think I had reached out to you a few months ago, something to do with Facebook. I can't really remember. And you said very politely, I'm abstaining from social media during Lent, and which I was very impressed by. What would you say is a connection for you between noise on the internet and having a sense of prayerfulness?
Well, it's funny you even bring up what I did for Lent because I've had to keep it going, and so I have not. I've distanced. I continue to distance myself from social media because of the noise, and because in order for me to be present, I need to be in tune to what I'm doing and what I'm being asked to be asked to do and be focused. And so for me, I need to live in the moment. Jesus, the present in this moment. And so allowing external voices, external filtering a lot of the external, and being very selective of what comes into my space and what doesn't come into my space. And social media was one that I needed to put some limits of what was coming into my space and not in, and relying on other sources and my friendships with other folks that if there was something big that I would be informed. If not, then it wasn't important.
That's the good news about friendship. It really transcends social media, thanks be to God. How about this, Christina? Who taught you to pray? I mean, you have a very, I would say, sophisticated and also simple, strong sense of prayer and what makes for a prayerful Christina. Who taught you that?
My mom. My mom. She is the one that I would credit for my relationship with God, with Christ, in teaching me just different forms of prayer. My mom is not one who is a theologian. She wasn't educated in the formal structure of education, but her mother, her grandmother, taught my mom, and it was in the most prayerful moments that she has taught me, and in ways that it's just been very um, very simple. From let me teach you in Our Father. So I learned to pray in Spanish, not in English. And so she taught me all my prayers in Spanish. To this day, I enjoy praying them more in Spanish than in English, in which I've now taught some of the prayers to my daughter. But she also introduced me to different forms of prayers. So praying the rosary was something we did every week. And it wasn't just in the family, but in community. And so I remember every Thursday we would head over to this woman's house, and we would pray the rosary in community, and then we would break bread together, and then she would take us to the Spanish prayer group at the parish, and then she would take us to conventions. And so she exposed us to, and I say us because I have a sister who's 1 year younger than I, so it was always the two of us with my mom. She exposed us to so many different forms of prayer that just gave me a taste of, again, there's no right way or wrong way to pray, that there are many forms that you can express yourself in prayer with God. So I credit it to my mom.
And you probably got a sense that this is bigger, this faith community is bigger than even just, you and your own family, which is beautiful.
Mhm.
Christina, has there been a spiritual book that's been exceedingly helpful to you, practical, inspiring?
I love books. That's one of the areas where I've never put a price tag. When we were out and excuse me, when we were out and my daughter wants a book, I've never said no. Toys, clothes, shoes, I've always said no. But when it comes to books, I've never given her a no. And even now, when she wants to order a book on Amazon, I go for it because I think there's just a thirst for learning and an opportunity. So my house is surrounded with books, and so I have a whole shelf of just different books of prayers that over the years I've read, and I pulled a few of them off my shelf that I find myself kind of going back to them quite often. And so I'll give you the title of a few of them, and then that way maybe some of them you'll be familiar. But this was a gift. It's called The Year of Spiritual Companionship, and it's 52 weeks of wisdom of life for gratitude, balance, and happiness. And it helps me to reflect. This is by Ann Kurtz Curion. It's just every day. Again, if I'm not picking up my phone to read the gospel, then I'm picking something up to read. This one here is called Prayer and You, Wit and Wisdom from Crabby Mystic. This is Mary Leah Hill, Sister Mary Leah Hill. So this is another one. And I found myself the other day, I've had this and I've read this a couple of times, but I find that I'm always in discernment. My day, every day is a discerning moment of where is God inviting me to next, and how is he calling me to be or to do something different within my life, or even in the same capacity that I'm in, but differently. And so I picked up The Discerning Heart, Exploring the Christian Path by Wookie Au and Maureen Cannon. So I found myself beginning to read through some of these books again, and some on my nightstand, some on my bookshelf. And so there's not one specific, but there's just a combination of books that I've acquired that I'll pick up throughout the days or weeks and start reading again.
Well, hats off to you. You're the first guest on Pausing for Prayer who's come prepared with a list of books to share. So that's good. And I feel like for our listeners, maybe I'm just not the brightest person, but I've been reading Francis de Sales' Introduction to the Devout Life all summer, and I'm still reading it, everybody. And that's just been so powerful for me because it's so rich, it's so dense. I have every page, it seems like, folded over, and I want to go back. And actually, really, it's I don't want to end the book. I just don't, I feel like I'm with a friend in a car on a long ride, and I don't want to finish the darn thing. So for whatever our next podcast will be, I will still be reading Francis de Sales' Introduction to the Devout Life. Christina, how about for you? Is there a saint that really has spoken to you or just really resonates with you?
The saint that comes to mind, there's two. Saint Oscar Romero. And I think I've developed a devotion for Oscar Romero because I happened to have been in El Salvador right around his beatification. And so I experienced it with the people. It was just a beautiful moment of encounter, but of richness and growth for me personally, and along with the people that I was journeying with, a couple of friends. And so I got to learn about his life, not only physically seeing and walking where he walked, but learning some of the history of what happened during the era of his time and what happened with the people in El Salvador. His prophetic voice, his walk in encouraging justice and being with the people, and how he preached his homilies has resonated a lot with me. So he's been one that I've looked up to often and read some of his writings. The other one is Mother Teresa. She's just been someone that I've always admired for simplicity and just being with people, and her humbleness and gentle heart. That, again, I have another one of her books here that I find myself just in awe of how she led her life. So those would be two that I've admired. There's others. My daughter is named after St. Clare, so I could talk about St. Clare and what she means to me as well. But primarily, it's Mother Teresa and St. Oscar Romero.
Mother Teresa is just so approachable, isn't she? I've never met anyone who hasn't found something of real wisdom in her writings. And I think too, her sense of struggle and doubt. And here's this woman who we put in, kind of the contemporary Mount Rushmore, the all-star team of modern saints. And yet, boy, does she really struggled with a lot of doubt. And I think that makes her so approachable because I don't know about you, but I certainly struggle with doubt and discouragement and things like that. So it's inspiring, and certainly Romero, my goodness, just his willingness to give everything and to essentially just offer up himself and his priesthood and everything just for the sake of people and discipleship, and incredibly inspiring, very beautiful witness. Christina, what's your advice to somebody who may be listening and is kind of struggling with prayer? You know, somebody who they pray occasionally, they find it difficult to build that momentum, or maybe somebody out there who's stuck in that doom loop of, I'm not doing it right. And so then they figure, I guess I can't pray. And then, you know, and that's just such a tragedy, because then they feel just so far from God. And so what I want to just give you a chance to kind of speak into one of those listeners who might be struggling with one of those things.
Well, if you happen to be an individual who, like me at first, was struggling with the question, as you know, tell me about your prayer life, and then you struggled how to answer because there's no right way or wrong way, I would say, don't give up. Don't give up. The richness of our faith is that there are so many ways that we can have a conversation with God. There's many ways to pray. And so to continue to explore, to continue to find what works best for you. And if that means it's 5 minutes in a car ride when you're driving, or if it means you're locking yourself in the bathroom for 5 minutes because that's where you can get some peace and quiet, whatever that might look like, explore and find a way that just fits you, resonates with you, and that you find having those encounters, closer encounters with Christ on a personal level, for personal prayer.
Two last questions, and we're talking with Christina Lamas, Executive Director of the National Federation for Catholic Youth Ministry. Christina, are you have this incredible network of a lot of other leaders of nonprofits and faith-based leaders of a lot of organizations around the country. I'm sure you can think of some who you think of and you say, she is really prayerful, you know, or he is very holy. Talk for a second about the importance of prayer in your role as a national leader, because I'm sure that a lot of us could just get real busy, you know, on the hamster wheel of productivity and just managing our teams and trying to strive for that next goal or accomplishment. But how important is it for you to be a prayerful person as well as a leader?
So using your scale of 0 to 10 that you've used a couple of times today, it's a 10, Mike. Prayer has to be at the center. As a leader, it's key. It is key to how you lead, because if Christ is not at your center, then the question is, what is at your center, and what is guiding, what is leading your decisions, what is leading, how are you leading others if it's not to Christ? And so to me, that's key. So my prayer life, it's important. Again, there is no prescription that says it has to be A, B, and C, but incorporating that into my daily, and not only just once a day, but multiple times throughout the day, into part of who I am. My prayer life, my relationship with Christ is part of me at all times. It's not separated. I can't say it's work and then I'm praying. No, it's all fused into one. You can't separate me. You get what you get, and prayer and my relationship with God is part of what you get. And I think that's what I'm trying to instill in my own daughter as well, that there is no separation, that every moment is a prayerful encounter with God. It's a moment where before I begin a meeting, I sign myself and I say, all right, God, let me be the instrument, let me be the vessel, let me be open to whatever needs to take place in this meeting. So before I would walk into a boardroom, or now before I start a Zoom, I never know what I'm going to encounter, but I enter into conversation with the mindset that God is leading me, God is present with me, and God will help me guide. And as long as I'm open, I think I'm in good hands.
No question about it. Christina Lamas, really appreciate you being our guest today. How can folks find out more about the good work you're doing with NFCYM?
Well, I invite anyone who is interested to know a little bit more about our mission to visit our website, nfcym.org. You can also find us on social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. But more than anything, if you know of someone connected with the organization, then have a conversation with someone about NFCYM. It's something different that you can have a conversation versus something you can read on the website. But definitely, you can find more about us on the website.
Super. You can't find Christina on social media, but you can access NFCYM on social media.
Well, I do have accounts, but I'm just not quite active right now. Not yet.
Christina, thanks for being our guest.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It was a pleasure.